Welcome back to the FanSpeak Network, another episode of Siblings Showdown, our strategy edition. And today we're talking quarterback / receiver, Travis Hunter, and how we are handling him in big board drafts. That's right. It's Combine Week. So, of course, we're talking about wide receiver / cornerback, however you want to present it, Travis Hunter, the unicorn. Obviously, there's a lot of talk this week. This is one of the most polarizing prospects, the most unicorn prospects we've seen in what feels like maybe ever or forever. And so we've got to talk about it, right? And trigger warning, if you are absolutely against taking Travis Hunter and think he's the worst pick on the board, turn this off now. If you want to hear our bull case for why we are taking Travis Hunter, then keep listening. So I'm, of course, joined by my sibling, my brother, Steve. Steve, how are you doing? Are you ready to talk this through about the unicorn, Travis Hunter?
I'm doing well. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about it.
Okay, let's talk about it. So Travis Hunter is currently with an ADP of, let's see here. Of course, I just lost it. Of an ADP of 131 on Underdog. It has ranged, obviously shifted throughout the opening and big board to now. He was in that like 120 range. I was taking it personally a good bit there. And then as I saw, then he announced he was going as a cornerback. You kind of poo-pooed that right away. Like, who cares? And you'll get into that in a minute. And then basically said, let's hear what he has to say at the combine. We'll get to that in a minute too. But based on all the things we're hearing out of the combine, a lot of teams are considering him as looking at him as a wide receiver, or certainly open to him in playing him in wide receiver packages. Of course, obviously a lot of analysts view him as the number 1 or number 2 receiver, either him or Ted McMillan in this class. And he himself obviously wants to play both. He knows he's a unicorn. When people ask about it, how could he do it? He said he's just built different. The quotes from the combine were awesome. So now he's not going to work out the combine. Now it's our job to react to that. So this is obviously soft news. It's not hard news. We don't know the landing spot. We don't know the quotes from the coaches about how they're going to handle Travis Hunter. So with this soft news, how I'm personally handling it is in the 120s through 140s. I'm going to try to draft him. I currently have at ADP of 131. I've taken him I have 19%. I'm fine having like 25% Travis Hunter because I think this is a high upside swing. It's with really low risk based on where he's going. And we'll talk about like the range of where we're totally comfortable throughout the rest of big board. But that's how I'm handling it. Now, Steve, how are you handling it?
Yeah, I'm the same way. I just looked him at 22%. And, I was taking him for a while there. He was flirting with the ADP 100. But, it's swung down and honestly, his ADP is 131, but a lot of times you're still getting him in around 140. I do think it'll start to tick back up.
Yeah.
But the end of the day is, like you said, that 120 to 140 range. Sign me up for a unicorn. We're talking about after the 10th round of drafts, if it's past 120, and that's where you should be taking some shots. And as we'll get into, that's where there's a lot of picks in that 120 to 140 range that, boy, they look just as risky, if not more so. Yeah. And we'll get into that shortly. But I think people need to realize how good Travis Hunter can be. And yes, he's probably the best corner in this draft, but he's also probably the best receiver in this draft. It's him or Ted McMillan. I think you can make a case for either. But the reality of it is, Matt Harmon, who's the best at charting receivers, said the other day that he viewed Travis Hunter as good as any receiver he's charted the last 5 years, something like that. And he said he sees flashes of prime Odell Beckham. I mean, we're talking extremely high praise from somebody who all he does is chart receivers.
Yeah.
And the reason why is if you look at it, Hunter has good size, great speed. He's just so smooth, catches the ball well, incredible route runner. He is built different. There's no question about it. And yes, I don't expect him to do what he did in college and play 100. I mean, there was one game he played like 130 snaps, 125 snaps, whatever it was. That's insane. A, that doesn't really happen in the NFL. But B, I think teams will manage him a little bit better. But the point is, for whatever you're getting him as a receiver, you're getting a top end receiver. And it's like if you knew a receiver was injured and maybe not 100%, but it's a top end receiver, you're still going to play him. I mean, we see this from guys all the time when like Puka Nacua came back from injury and people were like, oh, he's not 100%. He went out and had like 9 for 9.
I know. I was like so scared to play him that week. And then I was like, why? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, we see this all the time, and we'll get into some of the risks later, but the talent is unquestionable with this guy. And to have some shots on goal for him, I think is absolutely key.
Yeah. And like you said, you're talking about right now after 120, in that 120 to 140 range, that's where I'm really comfortable. I think we'll talk about it further that, I mean, honestly, if it kind of even moves up to 100, after 100, like you're taking shots. You're kind of your meat of your roster is built and you're taking shots. And we could talk about like what builds it's best in and that kind of thing. But you're taking shots after 100 and they're not all going to hit. I mean, your big board that finished in 4th place, like a lot of your late round shots didn't hit, but you sure as hell hit almost all of your early ones. And you did hit some of those, like, of those middle ones and a couple late ones, like Zach Ertz being round 20. Zach Ertz was like, your hero. But the point is, especially in a 20 round big board draft, take shots. You're not likely going to hit them all, and you don't have to hit them all. And in this range, the risk is worth the absolute upside reward. And just to speak back to your point about Matt Harmon, like I try to lean into listening to the people who are the smartest at what they do. And Matt Harmon is the person you want to listen to about wide receivers. And if Matt Harmon said he's the best, like one of the best wide receivers he's started in the last 5 years, and oh, by the way, the draft classes for wide receivers have been insanely good overall the last 5 years. When you think of all the wide receivers that have been drafted the last 5 years, to me, that's like, why are we passing on that upside for, soft news and downside risk when the upside risk is just so immense? The other point I wanted to make is, because again, this all is going to be soft news. Once the BBM and the official best ball season starts, we'll have, know the team. We'll know what the coaches says, and we'll lean into, coach speak index and all that good stuff. But we'll have more information then. Right now, we know that a lot of teams are viewing him as a wide receiver. We know the Titans who view him as a cornerback are definitely open to using him in packages. And you got to think about just the range of outcomes, right? I just think it's very slim he's on a team where it's like no wide receiver and a total 0. Yeah. I think that's very, very slim to none. If he's on a team like the Titans, who are obviously at number 1, and they do say you're playing cornerback and you're going to be in packages and you're playing 25-30%, who's to say if receivers went down or just they saw, oh my God, this guy is a unicorn, he's insane, he should be playing more, that he just wouldn't get more snaps and more targets and snaps as the year goes on. Like, I just think that is so much in the range of outcomes, no matter what the landing spot, but especially if it is like the landing spot where it's like, oh, that's not as good of a landing spot because they view him more of a corner and like a 25%, wide receiver. Who's to say with injuries or just seeing him that he couldn't play more, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's also just because he's a 25% route runner, his 25% is going to be worth more than basically any other receiver's 25%, because when he's out there, you better believe they have a game plan to get him the ball.
Yeah.
And,
right.
And also I think that's going to translate if he's 30, 40, even 50% route runner. And those are realistic outcomes as well for a lot of teams. And that's what we're talking about. Like, and Titans are actually an example of this last year where Nick Westbrook-Akeen, I don't know what his ended up snap total was, maybe 40%, I would guess, and he had 8 touchdowns. So like, you mean to tell me that Travis Hunter can't do that?
Right.
And it's just, I think that's what we're talking about here, is one of these teams where whether it's him, look, the Browns are the team where I've said, look, they already have some top receivers, Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman. He's probably the 3rd guy on that team, but they're not going to have Elijah Moore. Obviously, Amari Cooper was traded, so he's probably going to split that 3rd role. But when he's out there, he's going to be a factor.
High leverage, yeah.
And we'll need to see what their quarterback situation is. But same going down the board. I mean, if he's on the Giants, yeah, he's not challenging Neighbors for the number 1 spot.
Right.
Like that's who could easily be the number 2 on that team in receiving. The Patriots, he could be the number 1. So,
Right.
you just keep looking down the board, and any of these teams in the top 5, 6, and I don't think he falls necessarily to 5 to 6, but maybe somebody moves up a spot or two for him because he is just so unique. Whether it's the Raiders, the Jaguars, whoever the case may be.
Yeah, someone could come up for him.
Yeah.
And if you think they're coming up for him to only be a cornerback, I think that's nuts. Like, I think that's bananas.
I mean, and here's a crazy one, and I don't think he's going up to 1, but if it goes like Carter at 1 and then Ward at 2, maybe the Giants at 3 to maybe recoup picks, because if they trade for Matt Stafford, maybe they go Hunter, or maybe a team like Dallas comes up for him.
Ooh.
Dallas had Dion. Jerry loves a splash.
Yeah.
And they've talked about needing a receiver opposite Lamb.
Mm-hmm.
Lamb is going nowhere, but boy, do I think Hunter is going to get the ball in that kind of scenario. So there's just so many ways where I think it works. And again, we're hoping it's above 25%. I mean, I think 25% is kind of the floor. I think that's kind of like probably the Titans would kind of said that he's a primary corner for us. I think a lot of other teams in the top 5-10 range could be more 40%, 50%. And that's where you're talking about really having some fantasy value, maybe not week in, week out, but multiple usable weeks and some real spike weeks.
Okay, and let's continue to talk about the range of outcomes for a minute. Say it's only in that 25 to 40% range, but as fantasy analysts and listening to so much fantasy content, we know everybody likes to talk about targets per route run. Again, this isn't going to be a guy that you're going to get the leverage on the percentage. If he's only running 25 to 40% routes, I guarantee his targets per route run are going to be insane. So like those are the things that matter. Let's focus on what matters. And we're talking about range of outcomes. And I just see, even if it's not the route percentage we want, I just think the target percentage is going to be there. And again, a lot of these landing spots, it varies, but you made a great point in talking about the range of outcomes, that it might not just be Titans, Cleveland, New York. Like it could be a team that comes up for him. Mm-hmm. And if they're trading assets to come up for him, you bet your ass that they're going to be using him.
Most out of them, yeah.
They're going to get the most out of them. Exactly. Quite honestly, if we end up with 30% Hunter in the big board, I would love if a team not as a Washington fan, but I would love if a team came up for him, because that means they're coming up for him and they're going to use him. And just like you said, he's different. And I just think, and it's so interesting how we're hearing from the coaches on the podiums here and the GMs on the podiums that there are plenty of teams that sound like they are viewing him as, no, we have him as a receiver on our board. So let's talk about that range of outcomes. Let's talk about best case, because people keep painting the bear case. We are painting the bull case here. And we are obviously going to be overweight Travis Hunter. That's what this show is about. But for the ultimate bull case, what if it is a team where, I don't know, I think this is less likely to just use them as nickel packages or something like that, and you're like an 80%, 70% receiver, but that would be the absolute best case scenario, right?
Yeah, and I think he still could be viewed as and end up with more defensive snaps than offensive, just because one, it's easier to sub out on offensive goal line.
True.
Notable run plays hey, we're up by 2 scores, we're just going to be running the ball in the fourth quarter, or vice versa. Even as a corner, he's actually pretty decent in run support. He can improve in that, but he's actually pretty decent. And so yeah, it could be a situation where he's not 100% corner, or 90, 95%. He's an 80% corner and a 70% receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be the real thing. I mean,
so if that happens, and you're getting one of the best prospects that Matt Harmon has charted in the last 5 years in picks 120 to 140, or even again, and we'll talk about in 1 minute about where we'd be comfortable going up to, at least in this soft news phase of big board drafts. I'm sorry, but after pick 100, if that's in the range of outcomes, that is a massive home run. Massive.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, and you just bring up the ranking. I don't know if you can bring up the rankings right now. And even going a little before the 120 range, starting at Steph Diggs at essentially 113. Look, he's coming off a major injury. He's older. Do I think he could have a good year? Sure. But that's the kind of risk we're
Yeah.
inheriting at these kind of picks. Keon Coleman maybe has a good second sophomore year, maybe not. um, yeah, and it's not just at the receiver position. Tank Bigsby, who knows who the Jacksonville running backs are this coming season.
Oh yeah.
Um, and same with Tajay Spears. Like, everyone thought that was going to be a split backfield. Tony Pollard controlled that backfield until the very end when he did miss a couple games due to injury. And then you look at the guys after him. Xavier Legette, very disappointing as a rookie. Maybe he bounces more solid in year two, but he had 100 points as a rookie last year. He was going essentially in this range last year.
Mm-hmm.
You mean to tell me Travis Hunter can't get 100 fantasy points? I think so. I think he can easily exceed that. Christian Kirk coming off injury, probably cut. Where does he land? Quentin Johnson, right now, he's the Chargers' number 2, but he could be their 3 or 4 by the time the season rolls around. He wasn't exactly one catching everything thrown his way. But he kind of was a volume guy last year, and that could change very quickly. And Romeo Doubs is another one. I mean, another guy who only got roughly 100 fantasy points. Green Bay needs to make upgrades, and Doubs is a guy they can make an upgrade on. Trey Benson, he could firmly be behind Connor again and not add much value. Anthony Richardson, we're talking about a quarterback here who might not start all 16 games. So if we're talking 25, 50% cases, he might only play 25, 50% of the games.
Yeah. And people, if you're talking about, again, we always frame this with let me get back to best ball. We're swinging for upside. Well, if we're swinging for upside, and I'm very bear case on Anthony Richardson, though I did hear he's working out with Josh Allen. He worked out Josh Allen's coach last year. That didn't work. Or quarterback's coach last year. He's working out Josh Allen this year, obviously, who was one of the very few quarterbacks to improve accuracy. Listen, I do need to take some, because again, you swing for upside, do I like Anthony Richardson? No, but like in this case, I love Travis Hunter, the prospect. It's just, again, how many snaps are we getting? How many routes are we running? But again, we're talking about how many targets are we getting, the leverage spots. And that's where, again, you're talking about fantasy points. You think even in that 25 to 40% like usage that he could absolutely exceed Xavier Legette's 100, fantasy points from last year. Yeah. And it's also when, I mean, we saw Ricky Pearsall hit basically, 1 or 2 weeks late season, and then week 17 just went nuclear. Like people were drafting him above this or around this, probably. Wasn't he going around this area?
For a while, initially, he was going above that. Then he's kind of slipped.
And then obviously
but even before that, he started slipping because people were drafting him early because they thought Ayuk was traded.
Right. Exactly. So that's my point is, like, look what happened there. Like, and again, and we'll talk in a minute about like maybe how you build a good Travis Hunter team, to build for. Maybe it takes a while, but I definitely see a scenario where we always talk about the post by rookie buff. We always talk about targets per route run, swinging for upside. To me, this all like points to Travis Hunter, because we're swinging for upside. The risk here, and again, even if he goes up to like pick 100, that's probably with soft news where I'm comfortable taking him, because again, if I miss, it's a 20-round draft. And like my starters, are basically filled out then. And I'm going to have to then hit on other mid to late picks. But like, again, it's how you build those teams. But yeah, I just think we compared to where guys he's going around now. And we talked about like the Pearsall case from last year. Let's talk. And you talked about Legette. I mean, you go years back, guys that you were definitely high on, but people in the market were higher on, or you were low on, excuse me. So we've talked about this on many drafts. So you've been kind of like the receiver whisperer of who to stay away from, rookie receiver whisperer, who to stay away from. Last year was Legette. The year before it was Quentin Johnson. The year before it was Treylon Burks. 2 years ago, Quentin Johnson, when you said was going well above 100. 3 years ago, 3 years ago, Treylon Burks was going well above, you said 70s or
70s, yeah.
Right. And people are just doing that because of draft capital. Okay, he's draft capital and what they think his usage will be. Okay, well, you got to like, let's opposite scenario or same scenario in high draft capital. He's going to be a top 5 pick. Could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but he's going to be a top 5 pick. So draft capital is there, but it's the opposite of so you're not getting the usage, but again, the upside case is way better.
Much better. Yeah.
The talent. Okay. Yeah. The talent compared to Traylon Burks, Quentin Johnson, and Xavier got way better, way more NFL ready, and way more likely to hit in even more limited usage. Right. I mean, expand on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, again, the landing spot will help, but we won't know that now.
Yeah.
And I think we're looking at a guy who I do think the bear case is like 25% snaps or routes, I should say. And I think the kind of bullish case is 50 to 70. 70 is like the elite end. I don't think he's going to be 100% guy, but it doesn't have to be, and here's the thing, like, yes, if he was going right next to Tet, at pick 50, then sure, I'm out. That's a lot. He needs to be a 80% receiver to do that. And I think that's very rare. And maybe he could get there late in the year, but you just have better options. The point is where he's going now. Could a couple of these guys above and below him outscore him? Sure. But he's also likely to outscore a handful of guys above and below him,
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's range of outcomes, percent chance that he hits. And I just think his percent chance of hitting and exceeding this ADP, and quite honestly, exceeding ADPs of a lot of guys above him, is pretty high. I mean, listen, I was always a Cooper Kupp girl. I only have 7% now. We'll see what the landing spot ends up being. But like, we saw the decline. Like, I could see, Travis Hunter outperforming, guys like him, or like you said, guys coming off injury like Diggs, or even guys, even much higher, So, I mean, I just think again, we just always need to consider the range of outcomes and swinging for upside. The bear case, like you were saying, is like that 25%, right? But even if the worst case scenario happens of, he's just not used effectively at all on offense, it never improves during the season, the targets per outrun aren't good, that kind of stuff. And it's just not a good pick. Like, Quentin Johnson and Traylon Burks of the world, who, again, we're going much earlier, 70s, 80s, 90s. Especially in big board with the soft news, we have 20 rounds. And we have a 25% advance rate. We get one extra spot in the big board to advance. 3 out of 12 are moving on. So 25% are moving on. So you can, this is where I do want like 30% Travis Hunter, because I want to take that swing, because if I miss, it doesn't hurt as bad in a 16% advance rate, an 18 round draft. And so that's why, and again, let me be clear that if I like the landing spot for Travis Hunter, I might still be overweight Travis Hunter in the main best ball contest after post NFL draft, but I'll decide then, how I'm going to handle it best based on landing spot, and then the actual hard news and real quotes from the coach. But I mean, doesn't that make sense? Do you take the swings now when you have a 25% advance rate in 20 rounds?
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, it goes back to what I was saying about the players picked around him, and not just the receivers, but right now Tank Bigsby's being taken ahead of him. But Tank Bigsby, if the Jaguars go out and sign a guy, Aaron Jones or Najee Harris, or they draft somebody in the second or third round, Tank Bigsby suddenly becomes a 180 player. He's barely going to be drafted in an 18-round draft. So you tell me, who would you rather have, the upside case of Travis Hunter, or the hope that the Jaguars don't bring in anyone and Bigsby out snaps Travis Etienne again? There's just a lot. And it's not just him. It's these other guys that we talked about, like some of the injured receivers or other running backs who we're not sure about their situations. Tight end like Evan Ingram, who could get cut. Yes. After the draft, there's still going to be mistakes in these areas. But right now,
sure,
that is a range of, you look at round, essentially 10 through 12, 13, there's going to be a ton of misses right now, just because people are drafting on ADP and not necessarily thinking of all the various outcomes. And some, they might luck out. Maybe Anthony Richardson is the full starter next year, but if he's not, he should not be going 145 or whatever his ADP is currently.
Right.
And so that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. Now is the time to do it, where after the draft, we'll have a much better understanding of not only these rookies landing spots, but how the full board shakes out for these other veterans. Like, where did Steph Diggs land? Where did is there more competition for Xavier Legette? Are coaches thinking he's going to be a guy? Same with Quentin Johnson, or is now Quentin Johnson buried? That vastly is going to depend whether they're valuable or not. And so my point is, I agree with you. Take it now. Take the risk now, because a lot of these picks in this area are risky.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect summary. So the action items that I'm taking is, I'm taking it now. I'm definitely taking this band of 120 to 140. And I want to get overweight. I'm at 19% now. I quite honestly want to get to 25 to 30% in this big board drafts. And I am comfortable probably even going up as high as like to early 100s. Would that be your summary too? Like, as far as percentages, where your cutoff would be about, okay, it's gone too high, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'll probably shoot for 25%. And, as long as he doesn't go above 100, I'm pretty much in.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been fun. Of course, check out our articles on fanspeak.com. Soon we'll be having a best ball subscription coming your way next month, hopefully. Obviously, be sure you're like and subscribe. Like this episode, subscribe to the Fanspeak Network. We're on the road to 500 subs. We're going to do a $500 giveaway party when we hit that. So help us get there. We look forward to doing that. We've got best ball shows every single weekday. Strategy shows, live drafts. Be sure to tune in. This has been a ton of fun. If you don't love drafting Travis Hunter, we're sorry. If you do, hopefully you find this helpful. But Steve, this has been a ton of fun. So for Steve, I'm Meg, and we will see you next time.